So I had a friend when I was about 21, and I just remember having a conversation with her where she talked about God as if he was her buddy. And it was really interesting because she said, oh, I just, if I'm nervous, I just ask God to be with me. And then it was so matter of fact the way she said it. And I just remember being awestruck I was like, wow, that must be amazing. Like to not feel alone, to not feel as though you're going through your life without support, and you don't need to rely on another person being there, because who knows if somebody can be there and who knows if they're going to give you the right support, but you have this anchoring in something.
Hello there, everyone. Thanks for joining me here on my podcast. Today I have a guest. Her name is Sonia Dhillon Tully. She's a Canadian actor and a screenwriter. Sonia and I are friends, and I met her a few years ago now, and we've had a blossoming friendship, and it's been a journey of learning to have a full spiritual life. This was my very first podcast. I thought, I don't know what I'm doing. She said, I'll come on your podcast. And I said, okay. So this was actually the first one that I ever recorded. So I hope you enjoy it. Thanks. Hello, Sonia.
Hey, Tammy, good to see you.
Welcome to my podcast.
I know, how exciting. Thank you.
It is. It's very exciting to see you.
Thank you. You too.
Mm-hmm.
All with makeup on.
Yep, that's right.
And wearing a nice shirt.
Uh-huh. I bought this new sweater. I went to Aritzia. They have 50% off right now.
Oh, good. Yeah, because, people aren't buying right now. So that's good.
Well, I went to the bank on Monday during the snowstorm. It wasn't open. So I went across the street to Aritzia. It was open.
Yeah.
I thought, you girls, you got to work, but the bankers couldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, that is funny. Yeah, I thank God I didn't have to venture out on Monday.
Oh, I did. I went out. They had the bike lanes cleaned at 10
I know.
But they didn't have the sidewalks cleaned.
I know. It's so funny. It's hilarious. I was out shoveling. I know. I went out and my neighbor was walking in the street, and she was like, the bike lanes are clear, but nothing else. Our street wasn't clear. It's like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's very, very weird. But life isn't understandable as we know. So.
Well, sometimes it is, but I just can't go to a place of judgment around it, because it's like it will affect me on the inside. So it's like you just have to laugh about it and go, okay, well, whatever.
Yes, that's a good way to start the whole thing, because our perceptions, we can talk about that.
Sure.
So getting into this, I thought I wrote down a few questions that I had for you.
Yeah.
And as an introduction, I'd like to say that you and I are friends, that we met a few years ago now, not so many, but a few years ago now. And we've shared in a lot of fun things to do and personal stories. Mm-hmm. So we've shared a lot of that. And I was curious to have you on my podcast. You have a number of interests that I'm interested in. You're an actress, you're a screenwriter, you're a yoga teacher. And I spent time being a yoga teacher. I've never been an actress, although I thought it looked like an interesting profession. Mm-hmm. And a screenwriter, I never even imagined. So I'd like to talk about that as well.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. Mm-hmm. So let's start with...
I would like to add one more thing to that list, though.
Okay. I put wife and mother in there too.
Oh, okay. Those weren't the ones. Though that is true. A seeker of God.
A seeker of God. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's top on my list.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. So I could start anywhere. I could start with questions about your actress training, and I could start with your yoga and how you got started in that, what you found through that, and or your screenplay or your seeking of God.
Yeah.
I don't want to miss out on the seeking of God. So.
No, we don't want to miss out on that. Well, for me, I guess I don't see them as separate things. I just see them all as an extension of who I am. and that even though they are very much separate. So I guess chronologically, I can't take God out of any of that. And because all of my decisions have been from a need to connect with God and a need to connect with some deep sense of connection and spirit within me. So all of them seem to be an expression of that. So, when I was young, I'm very introverted. So, choosing to pursue acting, which would have been the first on your list, came from a deep knowing inside myself that that was a true expression of who I was. And yet there was resistance to it because I don't like a lot of attention. So it was a very challenging thing to understand and to reconcile and to find my way into it. So, I went to an art school when I was went to an art school in high school, and then I started professionally acting when I was about 15. So it was really interesting because my parents didn't really, they just saw it as a way to build self-esteem because I was quite shy and introverted. And, I thought I was plagued with anxiety and self-consciousness. And, I'm sure that translated on the outside as well. So my parents, were supportive of the idea because they went, well, you're going to learn how to talk in front of people and whatever. So they didn't find it objectionable. And I remember being, 16 and driving myself up to this, I lived in Toronto, driving myself up to this agency in North York that I found online and walking in like with no idea what I was doing. And then I was represented. And then my first gig that I booked was a pilot for a television series, which is so rare. Like it was one of my first auditions and I booked, and then I was like working for all summer and made, I don't know, like $4,000. And I thought, oh, this is what being an actor is. And of course I had a rude awakening after the fact because that is not really typically what happens. But I kind of went into it and I just knew that I could do it. But, what was standing in my way was self-consciousness and fear. But I found that, through the act of acting, so to speak, I was able to tap into parts of myself that I would normally have not been confident enough to express. So that was very therapeutic for me, right? It's like anger and confidence, and it's like act as if you are whatever. And so I continued to pursue, and then after high school, I didn't go to university right away because I wanted to pursue acting. So I took, I guess it was like 4 years, and I did a lot of theater. So I wrote plays and I performed in I don't remember what it's called anymore, but it's kind of like political theater, but just like smaller theater companies. We would do stuff. I did festivals. I did lots of stuff. And so I kind of got, I wanted to get into film and television, but I didn't really, that didn't land for me. And I couldn't quite figure out why. I mean, part of it was honestly at that time, not being a white actress, a young white actress was definitely a liability. And the parts available to someone South Asian like me were very, very stereotypical and limited. And, I didn't really, they weren't really me. So, it just didn't really, the fit wasn't there. And so part of it was definitely that. And, I look back now because I kind of went back to acting. I took I'll just kind of quickly run through this. So I, tried to break, and then I took time off. I went to university. I got my bachelor's of education, honors bachelor's of education in acting from York University. And then I went back and I focused on film and television. And even then it was still really challenging. It was a bit better, but it was challenging to find parts that I felt were, I didn't book many parts. Let's put it that way.
What had changed? What had changed, do you think, that made it better?
I just think awareness of different cultures, and that we have more than just stories of, immigrant mothers who get beaten by their husbands. I mean, that was pretty much what it was at the time. And then they were trying to show South Asians more in like, not just the shopkeeper or the cab driver a little bit, but like a few doctors. So it was starting to change in terms of how those stories, how characters from my background were being written. So that changed a little bit, but not significantly. Like I would never have been considered for a romantic lead or somebody's girlfriend. Like it just wouldn't, it would have been like the best friend of. So, when I went back to acting, I did it for, I guess, another, 5-6 years. And I found it frustrating. And I found it just like you've got to really find a way to deal with rejection in a way that doesn't impact your self-esteem. And I didn't have the ability to do that, which kind of brings it back to having a relationship with God, a very personal relationship with God, because I didn't have that.
So how did you, and when did you learn to have this relationship or begin to have this relationship?
Well, at about 21. So I didn't grow up in a very religious home, but we were culturally, I did go to Sikh temple, my background is Sikh. So I was aware of the religion, but it wasn't really like a spiritual practice. So I had a friend when I was about 21, and I just remember having a conversation with her where she talked about God as if he was her buddy. And it was really interesting because she said, I just, if I'm nervous, I just ask God to be with me. And then it was so matter of fact the way she said it. And I just remember being awestruck I was like, wow, that must be amazing. Like to not feel alone, to not feel as though you're going through your life without support, and you don't need to rely on another person being there, because who knows if somebody can be there and who knows if they're going to give you the right support, but you have this anchoring in something. So that started me on this quest really to understand what spirit was. And, and I kind of went the typical routes, like new agey, tarot cards, like crystals, just all that stuff that is kind of available to us. Like, is that a sign? Does that mean that's meant to be? Like all of that type of, exploration. And it was more enjoyable, let's say, than really anchoring. I found it convenient use of my time, so to speak. Like it just was something I did and I enjoyed it, but it didn't really deal with some underlying issues that I felt of separation and disconnection from people and lack of confidence. It didn't really deal with that.
And what has that got to do with God, finding God?
Right. That's a good question. Well, my understanding and my experience now in terms of God is that what God does is it represents the highest version of myself and the highest version of everyone that exists. And that highest version embodies certain qualities like kindness, tolerance, joy, the idea of not taking things too seriously, pursuing truth, qualities that are empowering and that are uplifting. And so for me now, back then, I needed those. I needed to understand what it was like to be anchored in those qualities, so that when I got off track, I had something to return to, which was the highest version of myself, even if I wasn't able to actualize that. So
how would anger, how would a part showing anger or fear help? Because you said that they were helpful, that you needed that.
Yes.
You need to understand that.
Well, when I'm afraid, for me anyway, is that I developed certain behaviors to cope with being afraid. And those behaviors were typically trying to anticipate potential dangers, trying to anticipate what somebody else might want in order to mitigate their, opposition or anger towards me, or maybe harm. And so I coped with fear by trying to make sure that I stopped anything bad from happening to me,
Right.
Through others and through circumstances. And that wasn't a really helpful, it is a helpful strategy, but it's not something that I could or can sustain. So anger for me is not something that I naturally feel, because I wasn't given the space to feel that as a child, because in my family, my mom and my sister expressed in anger, and that wasn't really valued by my father, who just wasn't very angry. And so I was brought up with the idea that, it's not a strength, it's a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you can rise above that. Right. So, but what that did for me is it just didn't let me express a part of human emotion. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when I feel anger now, it's actually part of my healing. I see it as, because it's not something I go to. So I think for everybody, it's like, if it's a habitual thing that we go to, a behavior that may be a negative behavior, let's say anger, if you want to call it a negative behavior, it might be for some people because it might be something they go to, but for me, it's not something I go to. So anger allows me to get in touch with a violation that I'm experiencing that I normally probably wouldn't have even recognized. Because it's like, I can push away violation. I can push away boundaries being crossed, because I know that it's not going to, I believed it was not a successful strategy, because I saw in my upbringing, like, anger is met with anger. And then it just becomes this, which doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So what I've recently been exploring is, I don't force myself to feel anything, but if I feel anger, it's like, okay, what do I do with this energy now? Because I don't want to be lashing out at people, but at the same time, I don't want to be denying an expression. And I believe that every expression that comes to me needs to be looked at, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that I shouldn't look at. I need to look at it and go, what is this here to teach me? I don't want to stay in anger. I don't want to indulge it. I don't want to, because it can be an empowering feeling. I was angry yesterday, excuse me. And I noticed, I was like, oh, I wonder how long I'm going to be angry for. And I was angry and had this energy, and it was a productive energy, and I got a lot of stuff done, but then I crashed and I was exhausted, and then I had to have a nap. And then when I woke up, I felt sad. And so it was like, okay, that's a roller coaster, right? And I'm not interested in living a life on a roller coaster, because I'm up and then I'm down. So, but I have learned that I have to trust that if I'm in an emotional state, as long as I'm not causing harm to others in that emotional state, I need to allow myself to be in that emotional state to see what it has to teach me.
That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. So if someone habitually goes to a certain emotion,
right,
then it's possible that there are other emotions that they just don't go to. And so then they're not balanced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I would think so. I mean, I know that's
Mm-hmm.
true for me, that, the idea of turning the other cheek might be a experience worthy of exploring for people who never do, right? Like if somebody's vengeful, right, or somebody's, I'll get you back. But for somebody who's a doormat, who's always turning the other cheek and saying, I'm denying myself, I'm abandoning myself, because it's easier to abandon myself, I don't see how that is a noble. It doesn't mean you can't return to that, but for me, it's got to come from a different place, right? I want to be able to get to a point where I detach and I can allow something to, it's not about me, allow it to just happen and not take it personally. I want that to be my ultimate experience. But
do you think you're there? Do you think you're there or getting there?
For sure. In certain contexts, absolutely. And in others, not. And I think it will continue that way. It's like in certain contexts, what I love about this work, this spiritual work, is that I notice the progress, because in certain contexts, I'm like, wow, that used to bother me. Now it doesn't bother me anymore. That's amazing. But I'm humble enough to know that there's always more, right? There's always another context that if I'm okay with a new context appearing where I still struggle, because if it's the same context coming up over and over and over again, and I'm still reacting the same way, and I'm not, then it's like, okay, I'm plateauing. I need to, but if it's a different context, if I'm able to work through something and then I revisit it 6 months later and go, hey, that doesn't bug me anymore. It's a non-issue. Then I'm welcoming the next one, because there's always going to be a next one.
Right. Yes. Good point. And so in terms of your screenwriting,
yes.
How has your searching for God informed your screenwriting?
Well, I've always been interested. So I've only written one screenplay, just to be clear, but I have other ideas. I've always been interested in how the human, I guess, human psychology, human emotional state, motivation, what motivates people. That's always been, since I was a child, I've always been interested. It's like, what's the core? Why are you being driven to do that, or to act that way, or to say that, or to look that way? I've always found that fascinating. And so I think a lot of us, or I can speak for myself, even understanding why I do what I do, I may not know how to do something different or how to change that. So if I'm doing something, if I'm motivated by, I don't know, I'm feeling perhaps not good enough, let's say, and it's like, okay, well, maybe I want to get praise from somebody, right? So I can feel good about myself. Let's say that's my deep motivation is I'm just not feeling good about myself. And so I'm pursuing this, external praise as a way to feel validated. I may know part of me might not know that I'm doing that, but let's say I do know. I may not know that my pursuit is never going to bring me what I'm actually looking for, right? It's never going to fill that bottomless pit of self-worth or lack of self-worth with externalities. And so God is the place that fills that cup. And so I don't know necessarily if that has informed my screenwriting, but it for me, it poses the ways in which we are searching for things outside in order to fill what is missing inside. And I don't give an answer.
Screenwriting, is that one of those things? You're searching on the outside for something that's missing on the inside?
No, actually, for me, the process of writing this story I felt like it came from God. It really did. It was a very interesting experience. I write daily. And, I've been told that from those who read my writing that it's insightful and it's helpful, and that it provides some clarity. And I find it a very cathartic, therapeutic thing too. I write every day for at least an hour, and it's just my thoughts. It's not really in a very kind of, prose, I guess it would be. And I never really thought that I was going to write a screenplay. And then I shot this film over the summer. And as I was shooting this film, I was quite involved in it. I had a pretty good big part, and it was a very ensemble piece. It was a lovely experience, but and it was about relationships. And not all I felt. One of the things I felt while I was in it was that just missed opportunity. I was like, there's so much more underneath these relationships. Like, it wasn't my story, so it wasn't, but I kept going, gosh, if this could be explored, it could be so healing for people, to just sort of see, because we do things unconsciously. We don't know why we do things. And I just want it. And so I kept felt this growing, like, oh, if this was something I would tell about a dynamic in this context, it would be this, I would kind of show it this way. And then I came home the day after filming, and I was talking to my husband, and I just said, I need to write this story. And I told him within the span of, must have been half an hour, and the whole story just came out of my mouth. I was like, this is, and I felt like I was shaking afterward. Like it was this really amazing experience where my body was just,
that gives me chills.
Oh, it was so powerful. I just was like, my nervous system was just going crazy. And I was like, I have to write this story. And then I literally spent 3 days where I did nothing but write, because I didn't want to forget any of it. So I sat in one spot, and other than, eating, going to the bathroom, I didn't get out of my pajamas, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote.
Wow.
And within 3 days, I just had I had probably 1/3 of the scenes written and the entire plot. And then I was like, okay. And I just relaxed, and I thought, all right, so now here's the story. And, so that would have been in June, right? So now it's January. And then as the months progressed, I was kind of concerned. I didn't want to write any scenes. Like I knew technically it had to be a certain length and all of that. But I remember thinking, I don't want to write any scene that isn't inspired, right? I didn't want to write like a filler or, just something to explain something. So as I was writing the scenes, the scenes, as the story was progressing, I got to a scene and I wrote it and I went, okay, so now I'm at the next scene. And I was like, oh, this is what the scene needs to be. And it kept going to the end. And then when I got to the end, the length was perfect. It was beautiful. I was like,
inspired.
I was like, I don't have to add anything. I just have to edit it, right? And do draft.
How many times did you edit it, do you think?
A lot. I would say I probably did about 4 like thorough edits where I had to maybe move a few scenes around just to make sure the through lines were right. Each character's arc made sense. And then after that, it was more just technical edits. Like I got feedback from a copywriter, from a screenwriter, some friends, including you, who listened and gave me their thoughts just so I could see what I was missing.
Did you edit at the level of the scene, the sentences, the phrases? Did you do all of those? Did you go right through to the words, make sure that they were organized properly, that they were the right words?
Absolutely. Yeah. From dialogue and also stage directions and descriptions. Like I would read it out loud and making sure consistency was there. Like, the way I, the writing style was consistent, the dialogue of I was going to call them a client, the character was consistent with their particular character, and that I didn't bleed it into somebody else. And then I would put on, like, some of them have accents, so I'd put on the accent and go, oh yeah, no, they wouldn't say that sentence like that. They would say it more like this. So I did it to the best of my ability, to the point where the last revision was about a week ago, I think.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, yeah, everything I change from now on would just be a change. Like it wouldn't necessarily be better. It would just be, oh, I could say that, or I could say that. So when it came down to me going, I could say this or this, then it was nothing to change, rather than, oh, this would be better.
Yeah. Right.
So
right,
I revised
right.
it to the point where I landed there, where it was like, I could change it, but does that actually make it better, or is it just different? Yeah.
Ah, so you're feeling finished then, are you?
Yeah, I'm finished to the point where I'm hoping that I collaborate, whether it's a producer or an agent or somebody, so that, because I'm open to somebody who believes in this project as much as I do, and has I'm open to suggestions for its enhancement. Absolutely. Just like everybody I've consulted so far, some have brought in suggestions that I just kind of think, yeah, that's not really where I want to go with it. But others are like bang on. It's like, oh yeah, that would definitely make it better. So I'm finished as much as my brain can, finish it.
Mhm.
And, whoever gets involved moving forward, I'm hoping that they can bring something to it that I wouldn't be able to bring to it.
So who are you looking for to bring it forward, to bring it to the next place?
Well, typically at this point, because it would be more like an indie film, it would be a producer.
Mhm.
But, I could potentially get an agent, who then would sell it. And I don't really know, I know what an acting agent does in terms of representing an actor. I'm not really sure what a screenwriter, literary agent would do. I don't know that process very well. So I'd have to learn. Yeah.
Well, maybe somebody who's listening will tell us. That'd be good.
What do you need to do? Yeah.
Yeah. What's the next step?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I'm excited.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I am too. I really
it was a
love
very
it.
gripping story. It was a very gripping story. It was upsetting and gripping, and it was really something. So
thank you.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Was it difficult to write? I wondered if it was difficult. If it was the process difficult. Was any of it difficult?
No.
Oh,
No.
wow. Wow,
I
that's
know.
amazing. Writing
It is
supposed to
amazing.
be so hard.
I mean, it was labor intensive, but it
Yeah.
wasn't difficult. It wasn't difficult
Wow.
at all. And in fact,
Mm.
so much of this is, it's my story, but it's a composite of stories that I know are true.
Mhm.
So everything about
Mhm.
it is true, which helps
Yes.
because I didn't have to make anything up. I mean, that's not entirely true. The relationships are all real. The scenes aren't, it's not like all those scenes happen, but having those relationships and going, if they were in this situation, this is probably what would happen, right? That's kind of how I wrote it. So it wasn't hard to come up with ideas because I had the story already.
Right.
And it's honestly the best I can do. I mean, and I think part of what might make it hard, I guess, is if I felt like it needed to be something that I couldn't deliver. And it is, I mean, it's the best I could do. And I'm actually okay with that. Like if nothing happens, I'm honestly okay, because if it's like, it's just not good enough, let's say there's some magical person who can say definitively, like, no one would ever produce this movie. I'm okay. Like, I'm like, okay, well, it's the best I can do. It's almost like if I were to swim, if you and I were to get into the pool and we're like, okay, let's do a race. And I swim to the end and you're far ahead of me. It's like, that was the best I could do. Like, I'm okay that I didn't win because I put in all my effort. And that's how I kind of feel about this screenplay. I do feel it was divinely inspired, but that doesn't mean that it's supposed to be a movie. I don't look at divine intervention, let's say, if you want to call it that, as being it's supposed to be this. Then
Could it be a play? Could it be a play
instead of no? I don't think so. No, I'm actually not even interested in writing a play.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I wrote a play before. I don't know. I like, actually, for live theater, I like one person shows. I find those really compelling as a to using that medium or in that way. I find, but other than that, I just feel like film can do almost everything that better than theater, except maybe a 2-person play, like a two-hander. Right. Or a 1-person show. Those, like, I think that's theater's best strength, let's say.
I'm curious about your auditioning experience.
Sure.
And because I know you've done a lot of it, and I'm wondering what you could tell people about auditions and what you found tricky about it, what ways you found to make it easier, just what you know.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of actors hate auditioning, and I understand, because there's a lot of pressure and you feel like, I just want the part, I just wish somebody would give me the part, because then when I get the part, I'll do a good job. And I understand that. I really do. I mean, you don't want, you're in a position where you're putting in a lot of time and effort, and it might not materialize into anything. And if you do that over and over again, eventually you just start to feel like, okay, how do I get myself motivated to do this and to give it my all? And there's a couple of things that I do that I have found. So just to be clear, I left acting for about 15 years, and I pursued yoga, and I worked as a yoga therapist, and then I got married and had children. So I quit. I had actually quit when I was 29, I think. And I had no intention of going back. And then when my son, my youngest, was in senior kindergarten, I wanted to go back to work, and I didn't really want to go back to yoga. I was doing yoga rehab. And I was like, God, I've changed a lot. I'm wondering if I can approach acting differently now, given that I'm a totally different person. I'm older, and I'm also, the climate has changed in terms of availability of parts. Like every actor of color that I spoke to is like, it's a lot different. There's a lot more available parts. You're being considered for better things. So it was the right time. And everyone I spoke to, like in my former world, like my friends who were agents, they all encouraged me. They're like, you should definitely do it. And so there was never any discouragement or, I don't know, if that's a smart idea. So when I entered acting again in 2014, I did find that to be very true. I found that I was older, so I kind of missed my 30s in acting. But I was considered for much more interesting parts in my 40s, for sure, that were like, yeah, I want to play that part. So that was really, really good. And so I guess how I approach auditions that I think is really sustainable, because the thing about, success, I suppose, as an actor, whatever that means, whether you consider success being famous or whether you consider success being, this is my only job and I can pay my bills, or whether you consider success, I find this meaningful and fulfilling. You have to decide for yourself what success is. And for me, success in my third entry to acting again has always been, do I find this rewarding? Do I on net enjoy this? There's always going to be things about it I might not like, but on net, is it worth my time? Because I've got other things that I could occupy my time with. And the answer has always been yes, since I revisited, even during the times when I'm perhaps not booking as many jobs as I would like to. It's like, am I finding this meaningful? And so for me with auditions is I try to, I know to be very, very concise, I just try to do my best. And that if I leave an audition where I think about it and go, okay, did I do my best? And if the answer is yes, then that's all I can do. And I really, really know that. I have to know that in my heart, that there are so many factors involved in casting that are completely out of the actor's hands, like completely out of it, that have nothing to do with talent. And, usually, some actors will ask their agent for feedback, and the feedback you'll always get is, the vibe wasn't right, or they were just looking for something else. And, you could say that's an answer to just sort of placate the actor, but it's genuinely true. It's like, I just didn't see the character being played by that person, and it's kind of like if you ever look at, popular films, and sometimes there'll be articles written or little pieces written about, so-and-so was being considered for this part, and then it was given to, and then we all visualize that actor playing that part. And then we can go, oh yeah, that wouldn't have worked. And it doesn't mean that actor wasn't great. It just means we were like, no, I can't imagine so-and-so playing that. So, that's really what you're dealing with at the end of the day, is like, is your vibe what the project wants? And you may think you're great for it, and somebody else's version of that might be the right fit for me, but I wasn't the right fit for that. So I really have to approach each audition with, did I do my best? And yeah, did I do my best? And if I didn't, what could I change different? What could I change next time? And also the other thing that has happened many, many times is I can quote unquote nail an audition and not book, but then I can also do one where I'm like, I feel disconnected. I don't feel in the body of it. I don't feel in the vibe. And then I book the job. So it's not really how great I think I did is definitely not reflected in how I book. It's a different, okay, I booked that one. All right. I didn't expect that. There's parts like of this film that I shot in the summer, I'm bringing it up again because I was still surprised. And after I got cast, I was like, why did you cast me? Like, I can't. And they're like, oh, we just felt everybody fit. And then I didn't understand it because I kept thinking it's so not me and so not my vibe, I thought. But then when the ensemble came together, it totally made sense to me because I was able to see all the dynamics of all the other cast members. And I went, oh yeah, this really fits. When I was just looking at myself and my part, it didn't seem to fit. But then all of us together fit beautifully.
Right. Yeah. And so the vibe of it, so the spirit of it really, right. And how do you detach from the wanting it? How do you detach from that part?
Well, I don't want a lot of it. So meaning I'm happy to book, but it's very rare that I'm up for a role that I really want. I know that seems really weird as an actor to not want, but I am able to look at the project objectively and go, is this something, if I had to choose this, would this be something that I would like find really, really meaningful and fulfilling as an actor? And if my answer is, well, no, I mean, I'd be happy to get it, but it's not like, oh my God, I really want to play that part. So there's very few of those that I get to audition for. So that makes it easy. But if it is something that I was like, oh, this would be so great to do, I'd love to do it. Honestly, what helps me detach is having a life. Like I have a really rich, vibrant life that acting is just a part of. And I've got responsibilities and I've got things that are important to me. So it's like, I've got other things to do. Like, I think one of the biggest mistakes actors make is they think that they have to put their entire sense of their entire being into it. And I think it's a big, big mistake because you don't have much to draw upon in outside life to bring into, because you're not going to be playing an actor. You're going to be playing a person, right? Who goes through experiences in life. And, so if you don't have experiences in life, you're going to be making up a lot of stuff. So that's number one. And number two, because it's something that is so much of it is out of your control. I need to feel as though I have some autonomy in my life and some sense of, I have choice. I'm not just waiting for, the agent to let me know that I booked a job. It's important that I have things that fulfill me, that I engage in, and that bring meaning to my life. And so that's just one aspect of it. So that helps me move on.
So having a balanced life is important, as it is in everything.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So important. So important.
What was your favorite role so far? And why was it your favorite role?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. I mean, a thing that popped into my head, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I'll just go with it, is when I was graduating from York, we had a final year play and we did Anna Karenina. And I played Anna. And it was definitely a breakthrough for me emotionally, because at that time in my life, I had a hard time connecting to my emotions, and which is funny as for an actor, but I really had a hard time, and I really worked hard on trying to dig deep and going to places, emotional places that I didn't have access to. So I found it the most challenging creatively, for sure, for me to do. I haven't yet found or been given a role that I have found as creatively challenging since then. But I have enjoyed the roles that I've played, and they're different. So, since I had kids and since my spiritual recovery and healing has taken place, I have so much more access to feeling that it's relatively easy for me to feel and to understand feelings and the depth of them. So they're more, I just get to have fun. It's like, it's not hard. It's not hard work. So I look forward to being given a role that is challenging creatively and emotionally, and goes to those deep emotional places. I haven't yet kind of met the two.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. You'd have to have a well-written piece, I imagine, to have both those things happen.
Yeah, I agree. Which is what I'm hoping my screenplay will be, because the character that I want to play in it would be exactly that.
And you could probably do that, I bet, if, you can. I mean, I've seen that's happened. People.
Oh, no, for sure. I'm doing that. Like,
you're doing that.
Yeah, no. No one else is playing that part.
I see. Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. I say that now. Right. But no, I can't imagine. It's just, I wrote it. And yeah, I agree. It's definitely something that I would love to sink my teeth into, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope that comes true.
Thank you. Me too.
Wow. It would be very challenging to play a part in that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be deep, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it would be.
So
yeah.
I had a question about being a yoga teacher.
Mm-hmm.
How did you become a yoga therapist?
Well, I had been practicing yoga myself, just recreationally for many years, since I was a teenager. And then I went to India when I was about in my late 20s, or 29, I think it was. And when I quit acting, and I was just doing yoga with a teacher who was amazing. And about a year into it, she just said to me, you should actually train to become a teacher. And it hadn't even occurred to me. But she, really encouraged me to. So I said, okay, I didn't really have much else that needed my attention. So, because I was doing a lot of yoga, I was doing it, 3 times a day. It was everything I did. And
wow.
In fact, I was doing these yoga eye exercises in the morning. This is how much time I had on my hands. I was doing these yoga eye exercises where I was looking at like something near focus, and I improved my vision to the point where I had to get new glasses. Like, that's the amount of, you can do it, but it requires, I had to do for half an hour every day. So I don't have the time for this. I wish I could do it again, but I don't have the luxury of that time. But anyway, so I was doing yoga all the time. And so she suggested I get certified and so I did some inquiries, investigation. And I found, like, right where I was living, there was a yoga training college that was affiliated with the university. So they were training yoga people to teach yoga to teachers. So it was like a yoga teacher training. So it was a bachelor's of education in yoga. So I enrolled in the program and I did that. And then, and I was also still working with the teacher that I had, who was a yoga medical practitioner. So I was getting like a full kind of, medical sort of yoga foundation. And then when I left India, so I was there for over 2.5 years. And then I left and I was coming back to Toronto. And I remember thinking, I have no idea what the classes are like in Toronto, like, or in the world. Like, I don't even know. Right. And this was in, what year was this? 2002, 2000. Yeah. Around 2002. So it wasn't, yoga was big, but it wasn't like massive. Right. And so on my way back from India, I went to Europe and I went to North America. And everywhere I went to a yoga class. I tried different ones. And I was pleasantly surprised that what I was capable of teaching was, in most cases, far more thorough than what I was experiencing in those classes. So I felt pretty confident when I came back to Toronto that if I were to apply for work, I could, because all I had done for work had been an actor. I hadn't done anything else, and I had quit that. So it was my intention of coming back and actually working as a yoga teacher. So I started working as a teacher in various studios in the city, and got really positive responses from my students. And then one of my students was a social worker who worked in the motor vehicle industry. So he was a social worker for people who had car accidents. So he said to me once, he said, I have this client who's got a brain injury and had some anxiety. I think you'd be really great to work with him. Would you do it? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. And so he referred me and put in a treatment plan to the insurance company. It was approved. And so I started working with him, and I loved it. I was like, this is the work I want to do. It is so, it just draws upon so many skills that I felt I had. And I felt like I was able to be of service in a way for people who wouldn't have naturally gone towards yoga, or maybe they did, and just to enhance their therapy and their recovery in a way that was, emotionally, physically, spiritually supporting them. And then I just transitioned to working in that industry. So yeah, it was.
I've never heard that story.
It was great. Yeah. So I worked in that for a few years. And then when I got pregnant with my daughter, about 2 months before she was due, I quit because I was working for myself. So it wasn't like I was working for a company. And then I raised my two kids for, I guess, 7 years, because I had them pretty close. And then when my son was 6, I went back to acting. And then about 2 years after I went back to acting, I also went back to yoga rehab. So I do both now.
You've got a full life.
Yeah. It's great. And it's really helped with that balance of, first of all, take the financial pressure off of needing acting to sustain me, but also, I do things that are meaningful and helpful for other people in my work, so it's not all like, it's not as self-centered, I suppose, as acting is. It's more other-centered. So I like, that's an important balance for me, for sure.
Yeah. Well, you often hear of actors working in the restaurant business, and
right.
And that has not worked out well for the last 3 years anyway, because all the restaurants have been closed.
Yeah.
And the people, I feel so, I just have no idea. I've never really looked into it, but the people who clean rooms in hotels, like, what are they doing? They don't even get tips very often. Like, what are they doing? Like, this transition has to quit. It has to go back to normal soon.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of the unheard tragedies, right? We don't hear about.
We will hear them, I think.
Of course. Yeah.
I
It's just like, where have the losses, we talk, there is definitely mention of, the mental health impact, and which, is, addiction's gone up, abuse, home for children and spousal abuse has gone up,
Of course, they're together, they're stuck together. Yeah.
So there's definitely, catastrophic repercussions, and in different industries, again, that you don't even consider, you don't think about. And also, the idea of working online, like, it's not for everybody,
No.
and many professions can't translate their work to being online.
And I worked as a massage therapist, and people who work sitting down all the time at a computer have a lot of trouble with their bodies. And so I can imagine that has skyrocketed, because everybody's doing that now, and not everybody has a good workstation. And so there's all these, and just hours and hours and hours of looking at a screen, and there's just so many. But it was funny, because I know when COVID first began, I thought, now all the families will be together, and the fathers will be with their children. And I don't know what I was thinking.
Well, that is true. Do you remember right at the beginning, there were all those commercials where we're like, this has made us refocus our priorities. We're together. We're allowing moments of silence and like families around the table playing games. And it's like baking in the kitchen. And it's just like, yeah, that was pretty short-lived. They should make another one of those commercials now, where people are like throwing puzzle pieces at each other.
They could just make the same one and everybody would think it's a comedy, right?
Yeah.
A black satire.
Yeah. No, it's actually really funny. Yeah. It's really challenging to be, which kind of brings it back to spirit in some ways, for me, because when you're sharing space and you have no reprieve, whether it's, whatever your reprieve needs to be, for some people it's going out and, going to restaurants or, going to the gym or just being away from their family, I work at the office. And if you don't have that and you're forced to be in a condition or a circumstance that isn't ideal for you, you've got to find a way to sustain you through that, right? And to find your space. I mean, we have a small house and there's the four of us plus two cats. And, often we're sharing a space. Like when the kids were not in school and they were doing school online, it's really challenging, right? Because you don't have the privacy that you need. Neither do they. And, I just found that little things like waking up early. I mean, I do this anyway, but I valued it so much more, just waking up early before everybody else. And, having my time with God where I could write and I could exercise then physically and be still and be with my breath. It was like, I needed that anchoring so that I could tolerate and to my best ability the other way. Like I couldn't be reactionary, it couldn't be, oh, this is where I'm at and I have to somehow cope. It's like, how can I carve out that space of my time, me time, my space before I have to share it with everybody else? And I think that's what God does for me. It brings me to myself, like to the anchoring within myself. And then throughout the day, if I find myself losing that anchoring, I know what I'm returning myself to because I've spent time being with it. Right? I can't be with it in the moment of crisis. I have to be with it before so that when I'm in crisis, I know what I'm looking for.
Yes. I think that's a good ending.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you for saying yes and coming on my podcast.
It was lovely. I appreciate it.